Hello, so here we are again. We're using our Buckingford sketching book, and I've already masked that up, as you can see. And today I'm going to be using this graphite pencil and drawing with that. And then I'm going to be using a number 12 flat brush, a number 8 flat brush, and a number 1 flat brush to paint with. And here are my homemade watercolors. So let's get straight into this. We're going to be looking at reflections today and just a tiny little boat scene. So we want our kind of focal point to be sorted out straight away. So we're going to come around here and have the lightest light and the darkest dark there. And that's kind of the basics there in terms of the boats. In the background we're going to have a bit of a rise there. It's not a mountain. It's a bit of a rise with a bank coming in, and then we'll just suggest quite a few buildings coming down, kind of mimicking sort of frontage or rocky scene, if you like, and we'll leave this area as it goes off into the distance. A few roofs in there, just suggested. Obviously windows. And it's just getting the feel, really, of a Mediterranean hot country, small village. And here we'll have these reflections coming in here, but I'm not going to draw those in. We'll put those in as we go along within the painting. A few more suggestions. And then for the boats themselves, we'll just quickly put those in, just suggesting them here. Sure, you can kind of get them a bit joined. Stronger, some going off the page as well, I think. And that's it. We're done with our graphite pen. Now we're going to start off by popping in the sky and the reflections in here, and we're going to go for a raw sienna colour. Get that in straight away, no messing about. We'll pop that in the background as well. Let's pop in some more water because we want that quite light, just as a kind of overall colouring. And we'll pop it on these rocks as well. We'll leave a couple of bits of light in there, some white, and down here we won't fuss too much with that. Here we'll just come a bit darker so they can blend off. Suggest some sort of ripples there, and that will dry quite nicely, I think. And that's stage 1 done. Wait for it to dry. Okay, so stage 2, I've gone to the smaller brush, to the number 8 flat now. Going to use this one. I've just popped in a couple of reflections that I didn't film. I can explain those, just some neat paint virtually while this was still done. In here to echo the buildings in the background here, just there, and a couple more drier brush stroke marks in here to suggest movement of the water. So some of this is dry, some of it's not dry, but I want to pop in some distance now down this side. So we'll go in with this sort of blue-grey mix here. And pop that in, and that'll just blend and bleed, and I'm not going to be too fussy with this. Just shape that a bit more. It's more like a mountain kind of shape, and then sort of echo it a bit in here and just let that bleed in. Just leave that there to do its own thing. I will pop in a bit more blue in this part of the mountain, just to push this back. So we've got blue and then the grey, and it sort of pushes back, so almost like a layer. So we'll just leave that really, really simple. Just feeling with the back of my finger, it's quite damp. It's not too bad. Now these boat shapes are something to consider, and we said we were going to have the focal point around here, light's light and dark is dark. That might change actually, the way this is working out, but let's see. It's either going to be in this zone or in this zone. I'm totally making this up out of my head, so I haven't got a source, but I've spent enough time on the Mediterranean and on that coast, I kind of get the feel of that quite easily and readily. Let's go in for some darker notes now. Now these paints haven't really got a name because I created them, and I've said before in previous videos that you can check out that process of homemade paints that I did a couple of years ago with these, and they're absolutely doing fine. I'm now just going to use the flat of the brush, and we can make nice lines here. And just because I'm just dabbing, I can't really put in detail, which is exactly what I want for this type of painting. You don't want to be putting in tons of detail. All I need to do is kind of just mimic down here where the water is, some of those shapes roughly. Let's just soften those off with some water actually just there. It's just clear water on the end of this brush. There you go. Just soften that off to bleed them in. That's what tends to happen on water. You get distortions on the shadows coming off. So we'll put that in there. Same with this one. There we go. So we've got sharp edges of hulls and bits and bobs of boats, and we've also got the kind of blurred effects that we've got here in these distant hills and in the reflections. And you want to be working with that as much as possible in terms of sharp edges and blurred passages. It's all part of the grand design scheme. So big shapes, small shapes. We've got a big shape of a sky, big shape of these cliffs, big shapes here, and then smaller shapes. So it's getting opposites really. Now then, let's just try. Yeah, that seems about right. So we're now going to over paint here. We're going to warm this up slightly. But I don't want it to, so I'm going to mix up a couple of mixtures here. And we'll put that in without any messing around with the same number 8 brush there. I'll add some water in just to make the closer part of this bank just fading in really, but sort of fizzled. There we go. And use my fingernails just to suggest some of these shapes for the moment while that's still wet. I'm just going to let that do its own thing again. Of course I need to get some reflections kind of in here, and we'll pop those in. That's probably about right. That'll do. You need to make sure that in this type, well, any type of painting that you have this, the underpainting coming through in these tiny sort of slots and chinks of light really coming in. So just remember, you do need to see layers of underpainting in if you want to create they call sparkle, and this is kind of drying well. Up on these cliffs, we're going to make these kind of nice and bright. Again, using the flat brush. Gone on the edge there, look for smaller shapes. Leave some suggestions of windows and bits and bobs. It's just joining a few things up. Just remember that principle of not leaving something like this shape here, which is kind of isolated and on its own, will look odd. So we do need to make sure we're kind of attaching it to other shapes. It's just designs in the way that works really. So this is just at the right sort of dampness now, just drying off to bring in some of these scratched in masts. So that's what I'm going to do. You don't always want them at the same angles, obviously. You don't want them all straight. It would look very strange if you had them all straight. But now's the time to do them. And especially while this foreground shadows are also damp. This is still quite wet in here, so I'm going to leave that alone. Some of these passages are getting drier, they're not quite dry. I'm going to come in now with a smaller brush and some neat paint just to suggest, and this will start to bleed possibly a bit in here, but that should be fine. Just bring in a suggestion of some windows. Not to be too precise with these, just dot them in as a roof. And pop in another suggestion of a roof here. Another one there. Remember the principle of joining things up. And it's just really having fun with it, I guess. There you go, just putting a few dots there. It's kind of more is less. Less is more. That's what I meant to say. I don't want these shapes too well defined. So it's bleeding in there nicely. Put a sharper edge in there. Just mix up the colours a little bit. Put in a couple of angles, triangles here. We said over here was going to have the light slide down. Well, the biggest shape is over here now, which is quite interesting. So I'm going to change my mind. You're allowed to do that as an artist. Change your mind halfway through. And I'm going to have here the lightest light and darkest dark. I'm going to pop that over there now. It's really thinking about shapes. So we've got quite a lot of sort of rectangle box shapes, and we've got some triangles as well. We need to make sure that we've got at least 3 of those from a design point of view. Triangles, popping in that principle. Just re-scratch through some of this paintwork. And then here, I'm going to drop in some dry brush, which we haven't got much of at the moment. Dry brush is just really whipping it across so you get the underpainting underneath, creating some movements going on there. You can see the difference it makes when you start mixing up different kinds of painting treatment. So here we've got the wet into wet that we've had a lot. You can see wet into wet there, and then we've got sharper edges, and now we've got this sort of rough dry brush, and it really does pull things together when we do that. So the next, and kind of getting to the final part of this, is to think about these masks and get these in quite strongly. I'm going to mix up a couple of dark mixtures here for those. There's one mixture. Taking some of this blue. And then we'll load up the brush. So I'm kind of practicing first, you can see, going down, a little practice. There's my cat's just entered the room. So practicing down before we actually make the stroke. Just going off there. I tend to put the reflections in at the same time because otherwise you forget. Just getting a bit of darker mixture here. I'm gonna run that one right off the page. This one we're gonna have a jaunty angle. And I'm going to go darker now here in terms of tone. Now, it's actually coming on quite nicely. Is this dry? Yep. We'll pop in a few windows in here as well on this building. It isn't quite dry, is it? It's quite nice. Quite like that sort of blurred effect that we've got going on there. Let's take some of that paint out of there. I just want to bring a different sort of shaping in there to kind of move the eye along. Not sure what it is. It doesn't really matter what it is. It kind of is about designs with these. talk too much about the sky, but I'm now going to darken up some of this just to create a little bit of movement in here. We didn't have much, it was all very plain, a bit boring, so we'll pop some of that in. And I want to pop in a touch of blue up there. We will, in darker notes, we will blend that in with some water. So we create a little effect. It's kind of balancing up this area. It was all a bit lightweight really. So I popped out some Naples yellow, which is nice sort of colour that's going to work well with this painting. It's a localised colour, so I'm going slightly away from my homemade paints here. Hopefully there's still some left in this tube. Yep, there it goes. Should be some in that. No, it's gone. Wow. Is there anything in there? No, it's dead. That's interesting. It's quite an old paint. It's finished. So forget all of that. So I'm going to pop out some of this cadmium yellow. There we go. Whoa. Which is not one of my homemade paints. This is a Cotman watercolor. It's just that it's very bright and what we call localized color. So obviously not a nature type color. So suggesting boat sails or whatever we might have here. I just want to pop in some of that. Just here, to suggest a boat sail there. It's quite thick and lush paint. There we go. And that's going to help the eye come into here with this localized colour, which will work quite nicely, I think. And then I talked about bringing in some Chinese white. We'll hang on with that for a second. I just need to bring in some darker shapes, darker notes. So I'm going to go for some blue in here. Just to suggest kind of more of a boat shape in here and here. I need to keep this under painting as well. Remember, the aim of this is really to try and get the eye to fall around here. So it's just little tiny reflections. We just needed some darker bits here, really. There was not enough to bring the eye into this area. It was all a bit wishy-washy. Okay, the final thing to do is to bring in some lighter notes with this Chinese white. So here we go with some white. Doesn't really matter which type of white it is. Just take it out of the tube. And we're going to come down here. As we said, this was our sort of area of wanting the eye to go. Just need to get in some thinner and finer kind of masked type shapes. Just here. Just pop in a few highlights here and there. Try and get some of this dry mixture out. suggest some sails here. There we go. Probably one more over there. Just done a bit of sparkling, I guess. And then just across the foreground on the water. Don't need to go too mad. Soften off some of these. Just to design the eye around here a bit. So just soften out some of these as well. Just kind of blur them off a bit. And then talking about blurring, final little thing, this, I love to do this. This is where you got to be a bit brave. I'm going to kind of cover up the sharper passage so it doesn't damage it with this tissue. So here's a little tip, just here. It's kind of the area I want the eye to go to, the sharper bit. And then I'm just going to spray in. Got this spray quite a way away, probably about 6 inches away. Just to let it blend and bleed and do its own thing. So creating that mist effect, and then we'll just let that do its own thing, and it'll blur off. When it all comes back dry, we take the tissue paper away. The magic you will see. So this is now dried out a bit. We're going to reveal the tissue and the kind of sharpness that we've got there. We're kind of about done. So I'm now going to take off the tape, which is always a nice moment to do that. Take off this tape. Got some liquid there. Just sort that out. And as we know, this is in a little Bockingford sketchbook, as a kind of a just to see different media, different approaches, and just experimentation really on these small pieces of paper. Just get this piece of tape off. We got our edge, so it looks quite nice. And very stormy scene we have now, don't we? Dark, almost sort of Turner-esque, and we'll just zoom in a bit so you can see that. And that's it. So thanks a lot for watching another watercolor demonstration. This time starting off with a graphite pen. You never know with painting what you're going to get. I actually like this. At one point I thought, ooh, but actually I can see the merit of this one, and you never know until you get to the end and you take that tape off what it's going to look like. And there's lots of passages there I'm very pleased with. So thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, to like, to ring that notification bell, and happy painting. Take care. See you next time.